Hi gang, just here to give a quick heads up that this work involves copious amounts of graphic sexual violence. I have done my best to discuss this aspect as tastefully and briefly as possible, but if you want to avoid the subject altogether, I do not blame you, and you may check out right now. For those of you who wish to continue though, here is the fantastic fiction video on Belladonna of Sadness. Before starting Belladonna of Sadness, I really only knew two things about it. It was what inspired the director of Revolutionary Girl Utena to get into animation, and it was one of those psychedelic cult films that made absolutely no money, but is much beloved simply for how weird it is. I also thought that I knew the plot. After all, I had read the premise, and surely there were only so many ways that the movie could play that idea out. Unfortunately for me, it turned out that the film had no intention whatsoever of doing what was expected of it. For better or for worse, Belladonna of Sadness is very clearly its own unique misfit of a movie. Nothing ages quite like avant-garde. That's a turn of phrase I find to be true of many work, but Belladonna stands out as an example of that statement in action, because believe me when I say that for 1973, this film truly was avant-garde. What is Belladonna of Sadness? Well, I'm afraid the answer to that question is an art film. Ugh. And unfortunately, as with many an art film, Belladonna of Sadness involves quite a lot of graphic sexual violence in the name of art. Jean and Jehan are two peasants living in France during the Dark Ages, very much in love but unable to afford their wedding tax. As alternate payment, the king and his courtiers violently gang rape Jean, and upon her return to Jean, the husband strangles Jean in a fit of anger over her no longer being pure. Only saved from death by a last-minute bout of shame from Jean, Jean is left with nothing except a little voice inside her head that promises her the power to accomplish anything she desires, if only she gives him her soul. Now, if you're like me, then you would probably expect the plot to go along these lines. Jean makes a pact with Satan, systematically gets revenge on everyone who ever wronged her, and then dies a tragic death, with some thematic mutterings over the price of revenge, yada yada yada. However, that is not what happens. For the rest of the film, Jean never, not once, ever, even attempts to gain revenge. So if you want a rape revenge plot, I would say give this movie a pass. Jean only gets revenge on two people who wronged her, and even then, it's only indirectly. The concept of vengeance never once enters Jean's head. And why is this? Well, it has to do with how does the world of Belladonna of Sadness work? Belladonna of Sadness is based on the book La Sorcière by Jules Michelet, an historian who is just as influential as he is controversial. He is responsible for coining the word Renaissance, and the idea of it being a separate period of time from the preceding Dark Ages stems from him, as do most of the negative stereotypes we associate with the medieval period. Perhaps more importantly though, he was a leading figure in the shifting of history away from battles and kings and towards the common people and broader social movements. While I haven't read any of his works besides La Sorcière, I can definitely see this mindset in that book, though Belladonna of Sadness has several subtle but important differences. The basic worldview espoused by La Sorcière can be summed up as such. Nature is good because it comes from God. Christianity is evil because it goes against nature. Monarchy and the church are evil because they draw their power from Christianity. Satan is good because he is opposed to Christianity. And lastly, women are more in tune with nature than men are because they are more emotional, nurturing, and irrational. They also cannot live for themselves, only being able to live through loving and devoting themselves to men. Because of all these points, Michelet asserts that in the Dark Ages, women accused of witchcraft did indeed make pacts with Satan, and that this was a good thing because a win for Satan was a win for nature. As an historical text, La Sorcière has largely been discredited, if for no other reason than Michelet assuming the existence of God and Satan as given facts, without offering any real evidence to support this. However, even if you don't agree with Michelet's view on history, and I would venture to guess that you disagree with at least one of his points, the basic worldview espoused by La Sorcière is at least fertile ground for making a fantasy story like Belladonna. Indeed, Belladonna of Sadness is a fairly faithful adaptation of the second part of La Sorcière, a hypothetical situation which Michelet assures us happened all the time back in ye olden days. Like I said though, there are some pretty important deviations the film makes from its source material, and this has devastating consequences for the movie as a whole. The biggest difference is that Belladonna of Sadness never really comments on Christianity or even the church. There is one priest in the film, the king's bishop, but his function in the film is mainly just to go along with the king and his plans. The Christianity in Belladonna is presented as a useful tool for the monarchy to keep the small folk in line, as opposed to the all-consuming, corrupting evil it is in La Sorcière. Now, in fairness, if you preserved all the moments in La Sorcière when Michelet takes the dig at the church, the film would be twice as long. But an unintended consequence of this is that it makes Jehan's pact with Satan much more morally dubious. Let's be honest, even if you are a die-hard atheist, you would assume that Satan was the bad guy in a fictional work, unless that work explicitly stated otherwise because, he's Satan. And without Michelet's assurance that Jehan's pact isn't actually evil, she's just been brainwashed by Christianity to think that it's evil, you'll probably be confused as to whether or not Belladonna is condemning or condoning Jehan's actions. This moral ambiguity extends to the film's handling of rape and sexual violence. As in the book, Belladonna presents the 2 times Jehan is gang raped, yes, it happens more than once, as unambiguously bad things. At the same time, though, it can't seem to imagine a form of sex that doesn't involve the woman resisting at least somewhat. There are several scenes that are not in La Sorcière, where men force themselves on women, but unlike the 2 gang rapes that are from the book, they're played erotically, with a woman's cries of no, eventually morphing into moans of desire and pleasure. It's like the film is saying, rape is bad, but only if the woman doesn't enjoy it. You should still wheedle and cajole her until she gives in, because secretly she wants it, but just don't be overly violent when you force yourself on her. Now, this isn't to say that La Sorcière is devoid of questionable ideas and consent. Unlike in Belladonna, where the potion the queen's page slips her is simply a magical roofie, in the book Jehan gives the page a proper love potion. La Sorcière maintains that any form of intimacy which involves coercion is a bad thing, but overriding their free will with magic isn't, for some reason. One area where the film and the book do agree, though, is in their conception of women, and subsequently women's conception of themselves. Namely, that they have none. This was honestly what baffled me the most about La Sorcière and Belladonna, and what made it 1,000 times worse was the insistence of both works that this was meant as a compliment towards women. When Jehan comes home, blood running down her legs, and her face blackened with bruises, her only concern is how her rape will affect Jehan's reputation. I'm serious. She was the one who was raped, but she never once even thinks about how this rape affects her personally. Even after Jehan tries to kill her multiple times over the course of the film, Jehan never thinks of anyone or anything but him and how she can make his life better. This idea is expanded further in the source material, with La Sorcière insisting that witches were real, but dismissing any possible collaboration between them, because since women can only live for the men in their lives, they cannot develop proper friendships or relationships between themselves, only ever seeing other women as obstacles or competition. This is why witches tend to be unmarried. With no husband in their lives, they transfer their services to Satan instead. Which leads to the biggest difference between the book and the film: the ending. Talking about this will of course involve spoilers, so if you want to avoid those, skip here. For the rest of you though... Okay, so in the book, Jehan takes the hint over Jean's various murder attempts and decides to live in the woods, giving people potions and medical advice. However, with no man in her life to serve, Jehan slowly withers away without purpose, and devolves into debauched orgies at her new home. Eventually realizing what's happening though, Jehan gives her soul fully to Satan, who promises to be a good husband, and the pair ride away as the people wistfully wait for her return. In the film though, in a last-ditch attempt to get Jehan once and for all, the king orders Jehan to lure her to a trap in the castle. Jehan knows that the king has a trap planned for her, and even says this aloud to Jehan, but when Jehan forces himself on her, Jean's womanly desires overtake her, and she surrenders to him. So, knowing full well that this is a trap, Jehan walks right up to the king and is promptly burnt at the stake. She could fight back with the magical power she possesses, but upon realizing that Jehan no longer loves her, Jehan willingly lets herself be killed, with nothing else to live for. What does Belladonna of Sadness have to say? Oh, that's easy, because immediately after all that, the film flat out tells you the message it wants to convey. You see, after Jean's death, her spirit fills the people with a revolutionary furor, which eventually culminates in the French Revolution, which, I don't know if you knew this, but that was led by women. Yeah. Girl power! La Sorcière and Belladonna of Sadness both want to be stories of female empowerment. But they're both hampered by their sheer inability to conceive of women as full human beings. Belladonna wants to say something about women's liberation, but it clearly has no idea what it's talking about, or what women's liberation would even entail, beyond simply lounging about in various states of undress while doing drugs and throwing sex parties. In the end, Belladonna of Sadness is a victim of its own axioms, which undermine it far too fatally for any prescient message it might have to work. Final verdict. Nothing ages quite like avant-garde. That's what I said, and that's what I think about Belladonna of Sadness. Honestly though, that makes it kind of fascinating in its own right. If I could describe Belladonna in a single word, it would be psychedelic. The film is very much a product of 60s counterculture, despite coming out in 1973, by which point that counterculture movement had largely died. And, perhaps fittingly, the weaknesses of the movie are largely the weaknesses that killed that movement. The drugs Michelet describes as medicine become psychedelics in Belladonna. The orgies free-love communes, and the worldview decidedly hippie-ish. But when you look back on the hippies and wonder whatever happened to them, the answer is that a lot of them just fucking died, man. The drugs became all-consuming, free love became anarchic, and fighting old establishments devolved into paranoia towards any rules or moderation. And if Belladonna is any indication, many of the men in these counterculture movements still expected women to play second fiddle to them, as they redefined the cultural zeitgeist. Belladonna of Sadness is a story of how challenges to old harmful axioms can rely on their own axioms that will seem alien and harmful to future generations. For that, I'm honestly willing to bump the film up to a 4 out of 10. And, if nothing else, the film is truly gorgeous, among the best animation I've ever seen. However, if revolutionary girl Utena really is the heir to Belladonna's legacy, then I'd say that everything Belladonna does well, Utena refines. So, unless you're truly compelled to watch Belladonna of Sadness, I would say go for Utena instead. In the meantime, I'm Marco Keen, signing off, and I hope you liked this video. If you did, and you would like to see me make more, please leave a like or comment down below, share my video via Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or other means, and subscribe to my channel. Also, if you would like to help this channel out, I now have a Patreon, which you can contribute to via the link in the description. If you sign up, you will get sweet bonuses like an internet hug, early access to videos, and the ability to vote in polls to help me decide which works to cover next. Also, if I manage to get 250 subscribers by the end of this year, that is 250 YouTube subscribers, by January 1st, 2022, I will play and stream Dragon Quest V for you. Also, please, let's make this happen! I'm really looking forward to this. Thank you all, and I will see you in the next one.